right, we are here. It is Tuesday night at 8 p.m. You know what time it is. It is time for the MCW Cast. I'm Tara.
I am MCW promoter Dan McDevitt, and obvious by his absence is Larry Legend.
I know. I stumbled a minute there on the intro because Larry's so good at it. That's his thing. It's in his wheelhouse. He takes care of that. But we do have another person joining us this week, and it is actually our guest, Adena Steele. So welcome to the cast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. We want to thank all of our subscribers and listeners real quick, and thank you for checking us out on Facebook and YouTube, watching that live stream, and also if you're listening to it where you get your podcast content, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Radio Public, CastBox, you name it, we're on it. So thank you all for liking and subscribing and listening each week. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, it has been a busy week. We just wrapped up the kickoff of the Spring Fever Tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Tall Cedars. We made our debut there in Parkville, Maryland, not too far from the Joppa Marketplace from the MCW Arena. So it was kind of cool to stay local, but in a new venue, right?
Yeah, and we're off and running, and a lot of other big shows coming. The Winter Blast Tour was fun. It was nice to get to Galena again after 2 years.
2 years. I know, almost 2 years to the day almost from before when
I didn't realize
we were in Galena.
until we were there and the people at Galena brought it up, but that was our last show before we got shut down.
Yeah, it was March 7th before we got shut down.
We got shut down. The world got shut down like 2 days after that Galena show.
It did, really. I remember that, yeah. So we're back, obviously. Things are going well. We've got lots of things on the agenda. Last week, we had a really interesting interview with the Professor Nick Harrison. He's not a wrestler, but he is a school teacher, and we had a really entertaining discussion with him.
Adena?
I'm not aware.
Are you on TikTok?
Not
really.
Not much. I try. I get lost in the shuffle there.
I just keep getting distracted, and then sometimes I'm like, where are they coming up with this For You stuff? Like, I really am questioning their algorithm, some of the stuff that they feed to me. Well, Nick Harrison, if you're not familiar with him, a really cool guy. He's a school teacher. I can't remember the state that he's from.
It's in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, okay, Louisiana. And he does wrestling intros, and he's really good at it.
He's got like
he's
a million.
He's
got like a million followers. On
TikTok.
I have to check it out.
And he doesn't just do wrestling. He throws in like some dad jokes in there, and some school teacher jokes. I'm a teacher, so like I could relate to it. But he does these entrances, and they're just hilarious. And he's gotten a lot of traction and a lot of coverage, and some of the wrestlers were retweeting and sharing his content too, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good interview.
And he is a big Jeff Jones fan.
Yes, and Jeff is hooking him up with tickets for
AEW. Yeah, he's a huge AEW fan,
yeah,
so that's awesome. So that was really neat to have him.
He was happy when I texted him and told him Jeff was going to take care of him.
Yep.
And get him into AEW in a couple weeks when they're down there. So
that made his day. So yeah, you can check that out. If you haven't already caught that episode, please go find that. That is, again, where you can watch the live stream. We did that over Zoom, so you can find that on Facebook or YouTube. While you're at YouTube, don't forget we've got Flashback Friday. This week is from 2019 Autumn Armageddon Tag Wars, Joe Keys and Orange Cassidy versus Joe Gacy and Luchasaurus. And while you're there, leave some comments for us under Flashback Friday. We're, responding and being active there in our YouTube page. And so you leave us a question or a comment, and we'll respond.
And if you have any matches you're an MCW fan that you'd like to see on Flashback Friday,
dream matches. We're going to let the fans be the bookers.
Well, any matches that they may want to see from previous shows that they may want to see as a Flashback Friday.
Well, I do like to know what the fans want to see from our stars, too, though. And right. I like it when fans come up after a show and be like, hey, it's so-and-so ever going to wrestle this person? It's a good idea. So comment. We'll respond eventually.
Right. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it. All right. Whew. So I think we covered all of the stuff we needed to cover.
Absolutely. Adena, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you had a little bit of a drive to get here.
Yeah, it was a little adventure.
You're from the Scranton area, right?
Yeah.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah,
okay.
and they have a huge St. Patrick's Day parade every year.
Oh, really?
And 2020, they canceled it because right around this time of year. Mm-hmm. Last year they postponed it and did it in September, and it was a flop. Then they were supposed to have it last Saturday, and we got a big storm where I am. and I totally forgot it was today. So I'm going like to get on the highway, trying to go through downtown, and just everything's blocked off, and there's cars everywhere. I was like, oh no, chaos before I even get on the highway.
Oh wow! All right, so that is Scranton. Of course, most people know is home of The Office.
Yes, it sure is.
So were you a fan? Did you watch that?
I didn't when it was on.
Okay.
As much.
I didn't either.
I've never been I'm not good at keeping up with series, and
Me
8
either.
o'clock at this, like now you could stream anything.
Yes.
So now I am, and my boyfriend is obsessed, so he kind of got me into it, and it's kind of just on all the time now. So I definitely. It took me a minute, but I came along to it.
Oh, wow. I had never watched it before either. And then during the pandemic, my kids were like, oh, can we watch The Office? And I'm like, all right. So that was our thing that we binge watched. We got through it 2 whole times, through all 9 seasons twice. And The Simpsons, we watched that too. But yeah,
I feel like it's just so relatable because I could, so many parts, I think in my life, I'll have things happen. I'm just kind of like how they look at the cameras and they just make these faces.
Yes.
And I feel like that in everyday life, I'd have ridiculous things happen. I'm like, okay, it's a Scranton thing. I don't know.
So the places when they do that opening sequence, those are real places in Scranton.
Yeah, the opening is real. I think it was filmed in LA or something, but the opener was, and so there's that one scene that they're going, like I could picture it probably more because I'm more familiar with the city, of course. There's like the pens, there's a building, and like I read that, I think it was Jim, like actually filmed that like through a sunroof. Like they drove through Scranton. I drove like on his cell phone, like the one part. So yeah, the opening's actually Scranton. Okay. But that's about it.
Funny. Do you watch The Office? Have you watched it?
No, I haven't. No. I've seen clips of it and all those. And obviously there's tons of memes.
Yeah.
It's real, like so many people have done, but I didn't realize it was based out of Scranton.
They have like a Scranton, like an Office festival every year in Scranton, like in July.
It used to be huge. When it was on TV, I remember being like when I was a teenager, I just hung out downtown at the mall and would wander around, and they had, probably when it was first happening. And I had met people from Australia. A place like that just came to Scranton.
Yes, right. I had no idea such a thing existed. And I guess it was 2020, I got invited to go that summer with a friend of mine, and she's a big Office fan, and she's like, oh, you've got to go with me. And I'm like, okay, great. And then like the pandemic came. So we didn't get to go, but I was like, this is weird. And so when I started looking into it, I had no idea that it was like a big thing and that people, like you said, come from all over the world to Scranton.
I feel like the show just has a kind of a cult following. So you get that. You get that a lot.
Yeah, and I guess they just come together and hang. It's like their own convention.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they get stars from the show to appear, but it's not like sponsored by the people who made the Office. So it's kind of neat how it's like organic and,
I just love it so much.
Right, that they made their own convention out of it, basically.
No, and I was telling her before we went on the air, like my connection to Scranton was I used to wrestle there. I would do like the house shows, ECW, in the late 90s, and it was just a really fun town to go to and wrestle, and the shows were fun there. That's what, Scranton was to me, like my connection to Scranton. But I didn't realize The Office was filmed there. But it was a fun wrestling town.
Lots of those Pennsylvania towns are like have a lot of wrestling. Remember we did a lot of shows in the like early 2000s, like Levittown and all up around there. We did shows like weekly. They'd run girl shows on a Wednesday night or something, and we'd drive up there.
Oh, that's fun.
And do shows in bars. Yeah, that was.
And what's the name of the promotion we were talking about that runs up in that area?
PPW.
PPW.
Yeah.
They run pretty good shows, right? In like Bro Keller, their champion.
Yeah. He currently is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bring in a lot of good talent,
and they run pretty regularly, pretty good shows.
They do monthly.
They're one of the indies that's got a really good reputation. So PPW, check them out. They got a really good reputation for being a solid indie.
Yeah, they do. Is that where you started? Like, is that where you trained in that area?
I did train with them a little bit. Like after I had started training, I initially trained with Backbreakers Training Center, which was in Scranton. Then it moved to like 20 minutes away while I was training, but I didn't even know how many places were around at that point. I didn't even know there were wrestling training centers even anywhere near me. But PPW's, theirs was about 45 minutes from me. So once I had gone there once to do a seminar, and then after that they invited me to come down and train, and then I started doing their shows. But it was one of the first companies to like give me a shot when I first started out. So I've always be appreciative of that for sure.
Oh, good.
Starting out's always hard when you have nothing to go off of. You know?
Right.
You that's prove yourself from nothing.
Yeah, I got lucky. I started here and I trained at our center here. Well, I mean, it was a long time ago, but so I had right away avenue into shows because that's one of the benefits that we have our training center here, and then we also have our shows. So
yeah,
it is helpful.
Especially being comfortable with the environment and the people and the way it's run, that probably helps a lot too.
Definitely. It does.
What got you into wrestling? Were you into wrestling as a child?
Yeah, I was. My dad actually watched it, and my mom worked at night, so when I'd be home, he'd have it on, and I feel like I always was just into it. Like, I don't remember a point, like, being like, oh, I think I like this. I just always was, like, just begging to stay awake to be able to stay up till 10 or 11, every time it was over. And, like, if I had school in the morning. Yeah. And since then, it's just been a thing.
So you were probably coming up as a child, I guess, like, through the Attitude Era.
Yep,
probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As I was just watching last night, I've been watching all, like, the old WCW Nitros and stuff like that online. I think it was, like, the 97. I watched, like, the first one that came up, and it was the most ridiculous. Like, it started out with, like, Macho Man in the ring on strike, and there was just so much insanity. There's people fighting in the bathroom. Like, wow.
I know wrestling evolves and changes, and it's different for fans that watch it today. But, man, that was a good era.
That's what I always tend to go back to.
And the Monday Night Wars, and it was, and during that time for 3, 4, 5 years there, man, wrestling was just white hot too. Yeah. Like everybody, just casual people and watching. I mean, their numbers combined were like, one of them was doing a 6 and one of them was doing a 5. So like, 15 million people watching. On Monday night. So yeah, that was a really good era of wrestling.
Yeah.
And then you had ECW there, like coming up on the tail of WCW and WWE, and they just started really doing crazy stuff. But it was a good era in wrestling. It was a good era to be a fan.
Oh, yeah. It's easy to be invested with it. I mean, I don't know if it's also I was so young, but, seeing the two companies at war and everything like that, as a kid, like, this is crazy.
Well, I feel like it was a time when there was really something for everyone, too. And I kind of feel that way now as well, that especially, like, with just some of the different talent on AEW, that everybody doesn't look the same. Everybody's, there's lots of different gimmicks, and I kind of see similarities to that Attitude Era period where you still had your big muscle bound guys, but I just feel like there was a lot of like kind of corny stuff going on too,
Yeah.
and some gimmicks that you were like, wait, someone gave birth to a hand? Okay, all right.
Right, for as crazy and as over the top, like, geared towards adults as that's stuff like that you look back on and like, God, that was so terrible.
I know.
And that happened in such a good era of wrestling. There was such a good era of wrestling, but even that stuff happened. Like
some of it's cringy.
Really, just terrible. I remember, and there was I remember that, and like WCW went. I guess like it was towards the end they started like tightening up on weapons. Do you remember the whole Hacksaw Jim Duggan incident? Which I can't believe hasn't become like a permanent meme on the internet.
Happened?
Like he came down to clear like Perry Saturn and Shane Douglas.
Was that with the foam thing?
The 2x4 that was foam.
I remember. Yes.
It was made out of like a styrofoam, and like Duggan hits like Perry Saturn, and he goes down and it bends.
Yes.
And then he you remember that? And then he hits like, and it bends again, and then he throws it like to throw it down, and it floats to the ground. Like, you know what I mean? He went to throw it, so it was obviously, so it was like there was other cringeworthy stuff that happened that you're like, oh man, come on.
Right. Yeah, there were definitely a lot of cringe moments back then.
And the commentary it just cracks me up. Like they just say anything that comes to your mind. Yeah. Like they were last night. The little guy took the someone slid him the ring bell and they went to use it, and the commentator just goes, "Oh, he's gonna ring his bell," like real dry. Just like this is ridiculous. It's just so funny.
And stuff that would never be on TV.
Right, like everything that came out of Jerry Lawler's mouth.
Everything.
I mean, there would be none of that he would be able to say today.
Just that was constant every week.
The puppies.
Yeah, the puppies and whatever remark he could make towards women's breasts and the women. I mean, we've talked about
the
this.
Younger the better.
And he'd say stuff like that. Yeah, and the women, like we've talked about on here with just the lingerie matches and stuff like that. I mean, could you imagine like Twitter and social media just erupting the way like with this cancel? You know what I mean?
Something like that happened today.
It would never ever fly.
Yeah, today. It was definitely a really interesting time. We I had lots of those experiences where we did lots of girls shows. It was awesome because you could work every week at different places all over the place, and it was great. But some of the stuff that went on was so questionable. You know, there was oil wrestling, and
Jello. I've heard all
Jello pudding.
From
I mean, I'm not proud, but I've had some. I've had some matches in food.
Hey, you gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Shaving cream.
But there, it's hard. You start to explain it, but like me and you have talked, Tara. Like when we would go to those shows, and Kim and Mickey James would do those shows.
Mickey. Yeah, we would travel together.
She was Alexis Lurie then. That was pre-Mickey James days. But they were fun.
They were fun.
They were a lot of fun.
We were always in the first half because the second half was all the oil wrestling and stuff. So, the real workers were the first half, which
and then
you
they
would think it would be flip-flop.
And all that, the ropes, so yeah.
Yeah, but I remember, we would get to some of these towns in Pennsylvania, and they would have weird restrictions. Like, remember that one time we showed up, and it was like, oh, you can't have any real wrestling matches. Everything has to be.
because they evaded the commission.
They evaded the commission, right.
They evaded the commission.
Yeah, and then it was
so they evaded the commission, so they had to work outside the rules. So would be like, that's when you guys had 2 out of 3 fall pillow fights or something.
We had a pillow fight,
a
strap match, we had belts or something,
you couldn't do any
and
moves.
then shaving cream.
Because actually that show, someone from the commission showed up and was watching. That's why. So that's why, Steve and Dan were freaking out. There's someone from the commission showed up to bust us. You can't do any wrestling moves.
Right. And I remember being like, oh, you know what? Screw it. Let's just have fun.
Point,
we'd already driven there. You know what I mean? The options were go home or just stay and figure out something. So we rounded up some supplies, and we were like, all right, let's do this. But
it's impressive, though. You found a way to work around. Okay, I'm gonna have this match, but I can't wrestle in my wrestling match. So I gotta get the wheels turning.
How can we have a wrestling match without wrestling? Yeah, so it was definitely a very interesting time. But I remember most of that area, just the fans being fantastic. They were super enthusiastic.
Yeah, that's always seems to be like that whenever I wrestle in PA anywhere, pretty much. But it's always like that. I think the commission's a little more strict than the bordering, when Jersey and stuff. A lot of shows I feel tend to be moving that way,
right?
Because it's way less of a hassle, I think.
Well, Maryland, you've wrestled in Maryland before, prior to us, right? So but you know what? As a guy that's older now, that's been in wrestling for 30 years, I always say it. I used to hate it, but I prefer the states with the commissions now because I think in those Jersey states and all that, if you don't have a commission, they keep everything from being too watered down. Like Florida, Florida, there's no.
Do they have any
it's
rules there?
Well, and it hasn't been. That's been a state deregulated forever, but it's always. But there's never been any really, indies being able to take off or build because anybody can rent a fire hall and a ring and go run a show. So there's just these crap shows everywhere. No rules. So they all get labeled. It's like if you're not a big on national television, even us, as long as we've been around, I always, if you get lumped together, your casual fan lumps, oh, that's that garbage wrestling.
Right. You go see a show like that. That's a Joe Schmo just threw it together. And the next week could be a great one. But oh, did you see last week? I'm not going again.
It's a disconnect.
Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize, indies, it's all separate companies.
Right.
People will ask me stuff all the time, and sometimes I don't know how to explain it. Oh, wait, so are you in a contract, or do you work for this company or that one, or is this a new one? I'm like, it's hard to explain, but it's everyone's their own thing. It's all separate. You might have, similar workers or people involved in it, but it's all, their own separate ones. And I think a lot of people just group all the indies as one thing, and there's so many different things you could experience.
Many different tiers of caliber of indies, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I always, with people discussion, I'm like, well, there's probably 500 indies in the United States.
Probably.
But there's really only 30 of us.
Right.
That are really decent. 30 or 40 probably that are decent. Like us, you'd PPW's reputable, and Wrestle Pro and Game Changer. It's probably if that 30 or 40 that are reputable indies. A lot of them are just really really bad. It's really bad stuff.
Have you worked some of the really bad ones where you show up and there's 10 people in the crowd?
Oh yeah. I've been through.
Well, you got to, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I still consider myself pretty early on as well. So especially in the beginning, I was like, I'll do anything just to maybe network or whatever. Just who you're gonna meet, or just who might see you and tell you someone they want you on that show.
Right.
You just never know. So I was kind of in the beginning like, oh, let's see what happens.
Right.
I always tell the guys coming through the training center, I always say, like, I think you have to your first couple years. And then I like, for me, I always like use one of our kids, like, that has done really well for himself, Leo Rush. I always try to tell him to follow his pattern of, like, you do them, but once you start getting your name out there a little bit, then you try to change to quality over quantity. And that's like what he did. Like, after a year or two, and he started getting a little bit of a name for him, he got a name for himself pretty quickly. But then you start going, okay, what are the top indies? And he had all his list. He had CZW, PWG, Limitless, Beyond Wrestling, all the ones that are like, and that's kind of, and I was like, and that was his path that he followed, so you got to do them for a while, but you get to a point where you can say, all right, I'm gonna, because to me, some of them, and I don't know how much has changed, because I used to go all the time, and I'd go with students, but to me, I worry too about some of them that just there's the locker rooms full of a lot of people that just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you got to worry about getting hurt. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and
yeah.
getting hurt and who you're in. And then some indies that, I mean, again, I used to do the indies years ago. I haven't been out there in 15 years or more, but like, I'd always, like, do some indie shows still have, like, crappy rings with, like, boards broken and stuff?
Oh, God.
Yeah, you used to run into that. Like, the disc, they rent the discount ring, and you get in it. It's like you can feel the boards
Where
creaking.
It has a giver, there's like a separation in between.
Yeah.
That's where it gets alarming. Because then, like you said, you could get injured, working the show. Like you said, now it's like kind of quality over quantity sounds like a good mindset to. Cause I think about, like, injury now after getting a couple bumps and bruises along the way. It's like, oh, like, things if the ring's not even safe, or you go somewhere and you see the turnbuckles half exposed. It's like, oh no, so anything could happen at any time, and that's all. I mean, it could always get hurt, but when it's situations like that, there's way more of a way more of a chance.
Yeah, you can see, like, exposed plates in the corner and stuff. I hate it when they have the, like, rubber mats, like, instead of a canvas where it feels
like
almost
underneath,
rubbery. No, like, on top. So it's like almost like you stick to it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
like
that
your shoe might get caught or something.
I know, and I'm like, can you just buy canvas? Like, it.
I'll
like,
get you some.
I mean, seriously, like, I just feel like having canvas on a ring is a really important thing to establish yourself as being a credible promotion.
Yeah, I don't think that's asking too much.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
ring aprons are an added bonus, but, like, at least have a canvas.
And the kicked up boards. Have you ever bumped on one, like, with a board, like, kicked up? And
I don't think I've ever bumped on one.
God,
hopefully, I think I can remember. I feel like I'd recall that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's.
Yeah, well, when you get to a place and you got to, like, get in the ring, before the doors opened, and, like, you're feeling for all the soft spots and making sure, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna stay away from that area over there.
I know. It's crazy that you have to do it, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
It is.
You never know.
Now, you mentioned getting a couple bumps and bruises. You haven't had any serious injuries, right?
Nothing, like, horrible that, like, took me out for a while. Like, I broke my nose at training, and then, like, my elbow, I ended up getting bursitis, my shoulder, a little tweak, but, like, nothing bad, just all, like, little, like, things, but it opened my eyes to be like, maybe don't take, every booking and have 3 days in a row, and then my body's, then I'm like, then you're gonna be more prone to injury, so I have to prioritize resting too, and I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
So, but just those little things were enough for me to be like, all right, I would not want to do anything that would actually injure me to where I couldn't work for a while. I have to go to therapy or something. So gotta reel it back in a little bit.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a broken nose. It's probably the most serious, I guess.
That would be it.
Was there a point at that where you thought, like, I'm not going to do this anymore? Or no.
Oh no, I just felt like a moron.
Yeah. Well, some people have that. Some people have that moment, like, man, I don't know if I want.
All right, how did you do it? Because I broke my nose in training too. How did you do yours?
We were trying to go in, like, from the apron, like, the hard way, like, so just basically just having to stand there by ourselves and flip over.
Yeah.
And I just was too close to the rope, so I flipped in, and when I went to sit up, I just bashed my nose off the second rope. Like, I just sat. I didn't realize how close I was. I just sat up real fast, and then I got out, like, literally both my nostrils were just streaming.
Oh my God.
Then he just gave me, like, a frozen fruit, mixed fruit, and I'm, like, holding up. That's all that was there. And I'm like, oh gosh.
Oh no. Okay. All right. That's worse. I broke mine on a kick out drill. So we were literally just doing kick out drills. And when
the person
I kicked out, he landed on top of my face. And I'm like, hi, that's my head.
Like, that one's supposed
but
to happen.
yeah, yours is better.
Oh, man. I was like, of all things. Just had training, naturally.
It is. Yeah. I mean, like, and when I first started, I got little injuries like that. Like, you know, I didn't have good ring positioning yet. So, like, I remember getting, like, rolled up and I slammed my toe against the middle rope and I broke my toe.
Like, so
you
it's
know?
so simple like
yeah,
that.
It was like, oh, well, it was my fault because I was too close to the ropes in the first place. But then you learn, like, I was never too close again.
Exactly. Like,
you know, because that kind of hurt. So, yeah.
At what point in your life did you decide, hey, I want to do this?
It's right when I found out the place that Backbreakers I trained at, they were having tryouts. My one friend, she saw, and she always knew I was into wrestling, and you know, I was at that point I was really into, like, you know, working out and things like that. I wasn't, you know, actually wrestling, and then she's like, found this Facebook thing about, you know, there's tryouts in Scranton. I'm like, you could wrestle in Scranton? What? You know, I've lived there my entire life, but I had no idea. She's like, and she was like, we're going, because, you know, I wouldn't just, like, probably wander in there myself. And she came, she did the whole tryout with me and everything.
But she had no interest in training.
Wow.
Just for moral support.
Yeah.
That's a good friend.
She's the best. She did. She went through it all.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was just like, at that point, I was just like, why not? Well, why not? If I try it and I don't like it, I don't have to do it. And then if I go with it and I love it, and I remember being really nervous right before my first match too, because I'm like, you know, training and everything, I was having a lot of fun, but then I'm like, what if I have like a match and then I don't like that? Because that's like so different than, you know, the trainings. Oops, sorry, one little thing. And I was real nervous leading up to that. I'm like, what if I wrestle and I hate it? Then I came back and I was like, that was the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you got bit.
Yeah, we have, like, at our training center here, the next step, like, you don't go from training to them being on shows. Like, we have birthday parties in between.
Oh, okay.
So on the weekends, which I know you saw them leaving.
Remnants of it.
But we had 125 people here for a birthday party today.
Awesome.
So we did two. We do two at a time. And, you know, so we had 125 guests that came to watch. And so everybody, you know, the wrestlers on the birthday show are the wrestlers who are also on the show. But then we also bring in those new students and get them a lot of reps where they're in front of a crowd. I mean, 125 people at a birthday party is more than a lot of indies.
Honestly,
so you know, they're getting that crowd experience, and so then they get that, you know, to kind of test the waters just a little bit. Like, oh, okay, I mean, if I can't get over in front of a bunch of 8-year-olds, like, you know, I'm not going to get over in front of 1,000 people. You know what I mean?
And it allows them to just try different stuff.
Yes.
We you know, you have guys that, you know, it's just typical. Everything is always the same. Usually, like, the guys want to be like the tough guy. You know, like the Triple
bad
H.
guy.
Yeah, the triple, you know, everybody. But then, you know, they get in, and then here with the birthday parties, they a lot of they experiment with stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Being flamboyant, just and different characters and trying different things that, yeah, maybe I wouldn't do this on a show, but they'll try. And we've had a lot of people, right, that have tried stuff and we're like, wow, that really worked. You know, and then they, you know, so it kind of helps them. A lot of trial and error.
Yes,
so it's
absolutely.
Be a little more creative.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
you know, we'd have guys like Leo Rush or, you know, Moses or somebody. They would say, hey, I got some ideas. I want to try it out. I'm going to come to the birthday parties this weekend. Is that all right? You know, and then they would put it together and, you know,
use
work
it as
that
like an
out.
open ring almost.
Yeah,
really,
basically,
yeah. Because and having that live crowd experience, you know, and with birthday parties, you don't know what you're going to get as far as the crowd goes. Like, we do a lot of parties where you can tell it's for the parents, not the kids.
Get out.
Oh, for sure. Where the kid is like hiding in the corner. I don't want to wrestle.
Are they hurting
I don't.
each other?
Are they? Why are they going to hurt me? You know, no. You're not going to wrestle them. It's okay. Just sit down and enjoy the show. But we get you know, like today, both parties were huge wrestling fans. Like, they came in their, you know, WrestleMania T-shirts and stuff, and I always love those because then I know they're going to be a good crowd. You know, like, they didn't stop from the time the first match started and the last match ended. They did not
just had a
stop.
blast.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. But
That's fun. And it's much less pressure in those settings, too, you know?
right.
So, like, hopefully they're just kids, parents, just trying to have a good time. It's not, you know,
Exactly.
certain shows you go and it's like a real judgy crowd. Everyone has, like I said, their own vibe. So it's like, it's kind of like less pressure. You just kind of go out there and, like you said, try new things, be yourself, or do whatever, and not be like, oh, am I going to get, like, booed out of the building, or it's going to be dead silent? What's happening?
Right.
Yeah, that's it's either that, like, hardcore, real serious wrestling fan or like old school, which is like for us in our market, it's like a mix.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a mix.
It is.
Maybe a little different than going to like South Philly, you know, but we get like a mix. But that's why I've always liked those towns like Scranton, or we have a town that we all love in Maryland, Hollywood, which is down southern Maryland. We go there 3 times a year starting next year. We've been going there too, but it's just such a great crowd.
Oh my gosh.
Just,
yeah.
And all our crew loves working the shows because we get a really good turnout, and they just love to watch wrestling.
And they're happy if we bring in like
Yeah.
a Hacksaw Jim Duggan name or something. You know what I mean? Because that's
Phenomenal.
exactly. They don't need a whole lot. Like
Yeah.
they're not worried about the latest indie darling.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the
at
thing.
all.
They don't know.
They don't
them.
Well, I was
care.
gonna say they
You
might
could
have
bring
They don't
in
know
a-
and they don't care. Yeah.
You know, you'd bring in where in some areas, say like, you know, a guy like Joey Janela was before he got picked up, you know, like they wouldn't know him. But, you know, like in this market, in Baltimore market, I try to have a mix. You try to have like a national name, but I try to have a couple of like the Joey Janela or a Ninja Mac or some guys like that are getting buzz, because we have a like 50-50, you know, there.
fun
But
too,
down there when we go to Hollywood, man, bring in a friggin' honky tonk man or
happy
Hacksaw Jim
no matter
Duggan,
what.
and they're loving it, and
That's
they're happy.
They're completely happy.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about some of the different types of matches you've done and some other promotions that you've worked for. And so stay with us, and we will be right back on the MCW Cast.
Show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast. You can pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Visit teespring.com/stores/MCWcast.
All right, and we are back here. Our guest today is Adena Steele. So we were just chatting about the wonderful world of indies and some of the real classy things that you might encounter, but also how it's a great, you know, experience and how you can put yourself out there, get a name for yourself. Some things I've noticed when I was looking up some different things you've done. You have the nickname the Violent Vixen, correct?
That's correct.
So what has the Violent Vixen done this year so far? Any titles you've won, big profile matches?
This year's been hard, sort of, because with like January, February, I had so many things that canceled, and with the COVID spike
That was
happened,
crazy.
with the weather. I'm horrible at time management, but I did have the PPW Women's Championship. I don't remember if I won that. Might have won that. No, it might have been last. I think I won that last year.
That was last summer,
That was
right?
probably the end of last year. Yeah,
Okay.
like that was for a while. But yeah, I didn't acquire any new. I lied. I think in February I got the Eclipse LFM Championship back, because I had it a while back, and that's out in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So that did happen. Like, there was one exchange. And yeah, as far as that was the only title so far this year. So far. But it's early. It's only March.
And you were in the ECWA Women's Super 8, correct?
Yeah, last I think it was July. Last July.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And Vicious Vicky was in that as well, right?
Yeah.
We just recently had her at the East Point show. We had Vicious Vicky, and she was another competitor in that match too. And did you win that one? Was that one you won?
I
or-
did not win
You did not
the
win.
tournament,
Okay.
no. But yeah, that was really cool to be a part of, though. You know, especially to be like, you know, like 8's not a big number.
No.
I was like, just to have been like reached out to participate. I was definitely flattered, and it made me feel like, okay, your work pays off.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're so busy doing all this stuff, and you're like, you know, you don't want to get like lost in the shuffle, so to say. But that was a lot of fun. That was really cool, and just nice to, you know, meet different women. 'Cause sometimes, you know, in the same areas you're working with the same girls all the time. So it was cool to meet some people from a little different areas and network with them as well.
Oh, that's good. And you recently did CZW, correct?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Back. I might have been. I don't know.
January,
Might have been. Yeah, I don't know what
think.
time frame. It was. I remember it being a beautiful, like a weird, beautiful day when I went down there. It was like Hard de Graves or something.
Harvard de Grace.
Harvard de Grace.
Harvard de Grace.
Harvard de Grace.
That's
which
all right. No one messes. Everyone
That
messes
is one
up.
that you would not know unless you lived here.
Yeah.
It is Harvard de Grace.
I
Yes.
just was like in my head when I'd read it on the GPS, but it was like a cute little city there. But that was
It
fun.
is actually really neat. They have like a lighthouse and a little beach and stuff there. It's
I was
actually
like, I would have
really
come
cute.
earlier if I knew there was so much.
Right,
Like,
right.
You know, it was beautiful day.
Yeah, it's a neat little town.
Yeah.
So now, are you? I know CZW. I guess they're kind of back, or that's different, or are you going to be working other shows for them as well?
Potentially. It's just lining up dates, you
Right.
know, that align. But yeah, that's what I think they're doing, that whole limelight factor of it now.
That
and it
Sunday
seems like,
series, yeah.
yeah, it seems like they're trying to take off.
Something
And
a little different
I think
for
it's
them.
good, even anyone doing Sundays. I noticed a few companies doing that more this year, Fridays or Sundays, and I'm like, finally. 'cause
We've done
everyone's-
Sunday ones.
For years we did
We did
Sundays.
them for years. I love Sunday ones,
Me too, especially
personally.
if it starts at like 4 or
yeah,
something.
if you
and
can
you're
start, or
done
even start
early.
at 6, I'll take off.
Right?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, we had a building for 4 or 5 years that we just did on Sundays, but I mean there was a time we did Wednesdays.
We
I
did.
don't
We
know
did
how we did
Wednesday
that. I
nights.
never wanna do
I
that.
don't know because I remember
That
that.
was 20 years ago though. That was
I remember because I was working like a real job. Like I was a landscaper during the day, and I remember like having to take off, go to these shows, and I'd be up and at work by 6:30 the next day.
Even
And I'm
if
like,
you got home at 2,
how
3.
how did we do this? And we just did every month, every Wednesday, or the whatever third
yeah, we
Wednesday
didn't
of
even
every
think
month.
about it back
We
then.
didn't.
It was,
We
you
did
think about
not.
it back then.
Right.
It was a Michael's 8th Avenue was a building we ran for years and
Yeah, like where they do like banquets, like weddings
and wedding
and
halls.
stuff.
So
yeah.
you couldn't even touch anything on like Thursday through
Right.
Sunday because they had bull roasts and weddings and stuff that they made big money on.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to work with us, but they're like, you got to do like Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday because like unless you're going to pay us like $10,000 to rent the place
Yeah,
to make
no
up for
thanks.
what we'd make on a wedding.
Right.
You gotta. We just was like, okay, well, we'll try Wednesdays, and
But we'd pack. I mean,
Was it a hit?
we'd get 1,300 people. When depending on who we'd bring in. I mean, I remember doing shows with like 1,300
Yeah.
people in there. So on
Well,
a Wednesday night.
Right?
That's
It's a
when I-
school night, work night.
yeah, and I
People
think,
didn't care.
but
Yes.
that's what we've talked. And you hear everybody kind of talk about it, like WWE or AEW. Like there's so much now with everything technology and all, so much to take your time. Like this was 20 years ago, so it wasn't smartphones and it wasn't
Right.
social media and all this other content and streaming stuff. So I think that probably, I don't know if, I mean, I guess if we had to try to make it work, but I wouldn't really want to try. I wouldn't want to try doing weeknights.
There's zero chance I'm doing a Wednesday night show and getting up and going to work in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not.
So, hey, you said earlier when you said your girlfriend found out about something and you were like, hey, what do you mean it's wrestling in Scranton?
Yeah.
So were you not someone that followed the indies?
Not at all.
Not at all?
I
So-
didn't even really know they existed, to be
Yeah,
honest.
right. So typical casual wrestling fan.
Yeah. Like growing up, like I said, I'd watched a lot, especially WCW, WWF, WWE now with my dad. But that was all I really knew. And then, even getting back into it, because I fell out a little bit in my teenage years. Then as I got older, I got back into it. And I never had any, I'd hear about, Impact, Ring of Honor, other things like that, like the bigger names, but I had no idea there were so many shows that happen
Yeah.
every weekend all over the place. I had no clue.
So many people
I did
don't.
not either. And I grew up in Hagerstown. I knew of Dick Karakoff's promotion, and that's it. I didn't realize that there was this whole network.
It's like an underground world. It's like a secret
I
little
had
thing.
no clue till I came here. And then
that's a
it was
good
like,
way to describe it, like an underground
Yeah.
world. I've been promoting MCW since 1998, and it's always like, that's what I'm, like a lot of, it's when I book stuff and lay stuff out, like I try to appeal, so I've had a lot of our like hardcore fans and stuff, and they'd be happy if I just brought in a bunch of like GCW guys and guys that were hot on the indies, and that's what they kind of the feedback they give. But I always try to explain, like, but I'm always continuous. It's a continuous battle to try to draw attention from the casual fan that doesn't know we exist.
Exactly.
And I can't tell you even over the last couple of years how many people, and we're always trying. I'm a big like marketing. I love marketing, and I love trying like YouTube ads and different things, and we'll just always constantly get people that'll be like, man, I live 2 miles up the road. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I never knew this existed.
Yep.
And we've been here, 8
years.
years running shows and doing events and bringing in the biggest names, Ric Flair and Bret Hart and the Four Horsemen and freaking Sting. And like, how do you, but it's like, man, you're just people that are like, they're like, yeah, I never knew, man.
I had to call the police one time at a birthday party because there was some baby mama drama and there was fighting. So I called the police. The police didn't know we were here, which was
and we had been at that point. We had been here 5 years, 6 years.
I think it was 3 or 4 years. It was pretty early on, but we were consistently here.
Yeah.
Like I And I was like, what do you mean you don't know where we are? I'm like, can you just send someone?
Right?
Like, and it was one of those weird nights when like it was a Sunday and I had already sent most all the students home. And so it was like me, my kids were here. They had gotten dropped off here. And there were only a couple students. And I'm like crouched down behind the sound thing because I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. Like it was like they were making threats. And I mean, it was a lot.
Birthday party.
At a birthday party, right. And thank goodness it was ending. Like, the birthday party was over. This is all at the end. But I remember calling the police, and they're like, where are you? We don't know you. We didn't know you existed. How are we having these events with, like, 800 plus people, and the police don't know?
You work in the same city.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Like, this is not a big town. Like, how do you not know we're here? But anyway, yeah, they did not know.
Oh, man.
So
It's a funny way to find out. You know, of all things. Just a little
So after you start training and you kind of are getting into it, or was it like a culture shock, like when your vision of wrestling is WWE and 20,000 people, and you go to an indie show and there's 30 people there?
Was
it like what is this?
It's definitely an adjustment.
Yeah.
At that point, by the time I actually had a match, it was like, then I was more aware of the indies and had gotten to, help out with shows locally and stuff like that. So I'd seen some of the smaller scale things, but yeah, I remember one time doing a show. It was NPA. It was probably one of the first ones I did too. It was supposed to be an all women's one. I walk in, and they literally just had lawn chairs too around the ring. Not even like actual not even just folding, like plastic lawn chairs, like you lounge in. But there was like literally had to be 4 humans like in them. There's all these empty, like it looked like you're at like a poolside with a ring instead of a pool. There's all these chairs and no one's in them. And then there's like 4 people, and I'm like you said, I'm like, this is different. This is different.
Yeah.
And those numbers stick out. I to this day, and this is going back to the early 90s when I started wrestling, 7 people. Like that, I remember that's of the least people I ever wrestled in front of. I went to a show because I counted them. You know what I mean? And remember that and they must have had, this show, they must have had 800 chairs out. And I just remember wrestling, and I remember going, and it was just dead silence. Like nobody was saying nothing. And I counted them, and I'm like, wow, this is really bad. this is really, it was just, I mean, like Jiminy Cricket was there in the corner. You couldn't hear nothing. But I was like, 7 people. It's like, yeah, that was bad.
Especially if they're not interactive at all, then too. It's like, oh gosh, all right.
Have you? Oh yeah, it's the worst. Have you been to an indie show or showed up to wrestle and the ring didn't show up yet? Has that happened to you yet?
They're
the best.
I've had it where like the ring was like I got there and I think I might be running late, and I'd walk in, the ring's like not even started to be put up, or like it was always there to stuff, but or it's about to be up, and you're like, okay, there's 15 minutes till bell or till doors open. I mean, and then they're like, oh, we got to switch this and that. I'm like, how is the show gonna start? I don't know. I don't know.
That's pretty commonplace.
It is, yeah.
But you wait till you show up, and then you got to figure out.
Or when the ring doesn't show up
at
all.
That's what I'm talking about. When the ring doesn't show up.
Right. Period.
Just period. Just not show up. I probably had 3. That's exactly it. Mats down, and because the promoters doesn't want to refund the money.
Yeah, we're going to make something happen.
We got to make something. I paid right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like one, they all did hardcore matches on one show. We just kind of all did hardcore matches, but put the mats out.
Yeah.
And but the worst. The worst, and I I can't believe people are doing this. When you have them are the people that will pretend to hit the ropes.
Oh,
when
God.
No rings. Oh my God! It's and I'd be like saying it like, "What are you doing?" Like there's no ring and it's just mats, and they'll be like stop.
At that point.
I've had 3 shows I did in my life. It seemed like it was. That's why I always ask people, because I had it like 3 times, 3 shows that I.
And now
knock on wood.
Now you probably want it to happen just to see it.
What would we do?
Alrighty.
Curveball. What you thinking?
Yeah, good old independent wrestling. That's the.
Always so reliable.
Well, it's sad that there's so many of the bad ones that kind of tarnish that image,
Exactly.
So then people don't necessarily understand that there are many levels of indie wrestling.
Yeah, not everyone's gonna be run like that. Or start 2 hours late, or I've had, cause like I said, my dad's a fan, and my parents come if the show is like local-ish, and I worked somewhere that I never did before, and I don't think they started for like an hour and a half
Oh my
after their
gosh.
sport, and he was like, "I'm never coming back here." But in
Oh,
my head,
yeah,
I'm like,
that's-
"Well, it's like,
This,
I'm
yeah,
used
that
to
happens.
stuff being all
Yeah,
over."
this is what happens.
But he's only used to coming to like PPW or places like that are close, and I'm like, "This is."
Well, it's but tell you what, like that's the one thing we're really pretty good at on time, like getting started on time. We are pretty anal about it, but it's one thing I learned over the years, man. That's probably the one thing that pisses people off more than anything. Like the fans, like we'd get the most and have people say, because we struggled with that at times years ago. We would, you know what I mean, I'll just start 20 minutes late. But man, people do get restless and they get upset, and that's we've been. I'd say that's probably one of our stronger points, that we're really pretty good on times. Not just that, but also not going over, say, like a 2.5 hour show.
We're
Like
really,
we try to keep the shows to like 2.5. And that, you know,
and
so
everybody has times in their matches, and we expect them to stick to it. You know, it's not
Right.
just go out there and just get in all 57 of your spots. You know, like we're only giving you 8 minutes, so you got to get your stuff in. You know,
Well, we always like the concept. It's just like going to a movie. Like you don't, and like 2.5 hours seems to be that point where like you start to go, you tire people out. It can be just like starting late if you got a show, and you've probably been on these, and the show goes 4 hours long.
Oh yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and people are just like,
And there's 12
you know what I
matches.
mean?
By the time your match is about to start, I'm like, I'm falling asleep. I'm like, okay, I gotta get it together.
Right.
Get it together.
Or you know, they stack all the title matches at the end of the card. You know, so and there's 12 matches on the card, so you got to sit through all of those. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than if you're presenting your main event and semi-main event, and by the time you get to it, 70% of the people have left because the show's already been 3.5 hours.
Emotionally drained.
Yeah,
They're just like, we just want to go home. We're hungry. Or I think about people that bring kids.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
they want to
Sure.
get them home and ready for bed. And
Yeah.
they're probably like, we've been here for how long?
Oh, my poor kids have grown up like in the ring virtually, and they know show days are just like, okay, so we'll be gone for 12 hours. You
Right.
know? Like I would, when they were little, I'd have like my bag of snacks and bag of toys, and here you go, just play in the corner, you know. But we have lots of kids. The kids here actually have their own little YouTube channel, and it's called Random Kids Wrestling. Yeah. So on birthday party days, they come and they film, like, and they edit it. They do commentary. They've got storylines. They've got title belts. It's the cutest thing.
Yeah.
So, but they've been together. They've been doing it now. I think the oldest one, well, mine doesn't really do it anymore, but I think the oldest one's like 15, and he's been doing it since he was like
Has
6 or
Xander kind
7.
of stopped?
No, not Xander. Connor. He's done. Connor. My oldest one's 18.
How old is Drolix's kid?
10.
Because when I got here, his kid was in the ring, and I was like, holy crap.
Oh, he'll do a moonsault off the top rope.
Yeah, I was like, Drolix,
drop
like,
kick,
holy
he's
crap.
10. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So they are getting lots of practice.
And
They
all
drag out the crash
all
pad.
of these kids are, you know, he was bringing Drolix, and Drolix was bringing his kid in diapers.
Oh, I know. I remember because when my
so-
mom would come to the shows, she would watch Drolix's kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I
He was just
walk
a
in
little
and
baby.
I'm like, oh, that's Drolix's kid, and he's flying around the ring and flying off the ropes, and I look at Drolix, I'm like, oh my
when
god.
did this happen?
Yeah. So who inspired you? Like when you were who were you a fan of?
Growing up, I guess, like I said, being in that like age range, I always loved Sting. He was like my number one always.
That's the crazy thing about Sting. I'm a lot older than you. We're in 2 different generations, but he was my guy too.
Still, right?
So, yeah.
There's something about like, even like the Crow Sting. Like, that's what I grew up on.
Yeah,
but,
so
like,
I grew up on the beach
surfers.
pond. Yeah.
Which both are good in their own little ways. But I thought it was cool. Just even now when I watch, like, he doesn't have to do anything or say anything, and they get like you get such a reaction, such a response, and he's literally just existing.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
just,
that
it's
is
like
true.
the idea of him and the suspense or his appearance. People like literally just lose their minds over
Yeah,
that.
he's just such an icon and got such a presence to him. He did an appearance for us a couple years ago and came out, and even it was cool for me. Like, grew up as a fan. Like, oh, now I'm a promoter and like Sting's working for me. But to like just him being around the locker room, you could kind of see everybody. Like just the presence. He's one of them guys that just has an aura about him. That's like special. You know what I mean? And I think even the fans nowadays probably appreciate the fact that this is probably the last year or so. I mean, and he's kind of talked about
he's
it
going
recently.
all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, they realize like you're kind of like a Tom Brady, or you know what I mean, even though he just came
Well,
back.
I was gonna say.
What about the guy did you hear about that?
What?
the guy that paid $500,000 for the ball at an auction 2 days before he announced
that he was coming back?
It was his last touchdown pass, so it was the last touchdown pass of his career.
Oh, no, not
anymore.
And
he paid it in an auction. It was like $491,000 he at this auction. 48 hours later, Tom Brady announced.
So now that value is going.
They said They said the value dropped to about $100,000. So Tom Brady like passes like are worth like 100. So it dropped just like that. I was listening to a sports show, and they were saying, when Tom Brady announced it, he could probably resell it for like $100,000 now.
Oh, that's awful.
You know,
I never saw that coming though.
No, you think, man, like Tom Brady's got to do something for that guy. Come on, man, you make like $100 million a year.
Honestly,
you know, like come on, freaking do something for that guy.
Oh, that's scary.
So I wanted to ask you, one of the trends that is really popular these days is intergender wrestling. Is that something you've done as well?
Yeah, I've done a lot. I feel like, especially in the beginning, a lot of people I think people specifically noticed I was doing it, and then were bringing me in with that. And I think even just starting out, like my first match was with a guy.
Oh, okay.
Because, where I trained, it was all guys. So I was kind of used to their training with only guys. So for me, I was always fine and comfortable with it. I know, some people feel differently, which is, whatever, it's good, works for you. But I particularly enjoy it because I think it's like anything, an intergender or like, with a girl or a three-way, like every match has a different like story and thing behind it. So I like doing a little bit of everything like that because it keeps me going. Not like I get bored. So doing something different or having a little different psychology to it keeps me invested. But I have I've had some of my favorite ones, just, intergender. But
who are some of the guys you've worked with? Some of the indie guys you've worked?
I've done. Let's see. Well, I do that Intergender Bonanza a lot when they are running. So I've worked like Mark Angel there a couple times, Drew Blood a couple times. I'm having like a brain fart now. I guess there's been so many random matches, but it's even like my boyfriend. I wrestled him before we were dating. So
your boyfriend, you're a relationship, a wrestling relationship.
Yeah.
Who's your boyfriend?
Oh, his wrestling name is Kit Raff. But he's also from Scranton, but then he was out in Cali for a while, like when I started training, so we didn't really.
Oh, okay.
And because he did a lot of tag wrestling with his best friend out there, and then he just missed home for some reason. He was like, I want to go back to Scranton from California.
Did he go out there for wrestling?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, because they wanted to just explore more out of the area. But he missed family and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's cute. Yeah.
And then you guys met when he came back?
Yeah. Okay. We wrestled, and then that was like, we both were in other, had our stuff going on. It was just that, and then reconnected after that. I'm like, that's weird. Like if you think if someone had told you that day that this would happen, I'd never think it. But yeah, otherwise, like, I've literally drawing a blank. I feel like it's always been more like the local, like kind of people too. A lot of times, like to the areas. So, or like I have a thing going at one place now with that. What's the Robbie Illuminati? But we had a thing like a couple weeks ago, and it's just fun because fans like. Everyone, you could have a different story or angle, and like people just like sometimes they just like to see,
it's all
the guy.
I think it's really popular right now.
I think it's all. I mean, you like especially online. You put it online. I mean, and you freaking end up with 500,000 views on the video because like people search it out. But believe me, I'm a very old school mentality, but I think it is in the way that the story's told.
Yeah.
Like to. And that I have some people some people are really for it, and then you have some people that are really freaking against it and get angry.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's a medium ground. Like
I agree.
For visually, like I don't. It would never make sense to have like a woman versus Brock Lesnar type of, you know what I mean? Like and that's what I think people don't understand. I'm like I think there's a middle ground, and I think there's a middle ground in between the people that are really for it and people that are really against it, where you can do it and make sense.
I liked, when I was
we've done
wrestling,
it a couple times.
When we would do like intergender tag matches, but here with the commission at the time, the girls could only wrestle the girls and the guys could only wrestle the guys. But like I enjoyed that. Like I thought it was a lot of fun having those types of matches, even though there was no, combat or whatever, or touching from guys on girls or vice versa. But, I enjoyed just that there were able to be different layers of physicality in a match, where the women could do something different and the men could do something different, but the end goal was still the same, to beat your opponent. So I always enjoyed intergender tag matches, but didn't really have a lot of opportunity to wrestle a lot of guys because of the athletic commission here. But now they were allowed. So
and I fought that.
Yeah.
Well, I fought that. For
really?
years. And it's funny, literally what you just said is what I would, because they were so strict. They were so strict with it 10 years ago. So they were so strict that, like, if Tara was a valet at ringside, they wouldn't even let her, like, interfere and slap a guy. They would threaten to suspend her. Like, it couldn't even be a valet, like, zero contact.
No interaction whatsoever.
So, and what I would say to them is exactly what you'd say. I would go to the commission. I'd say, you guys need to come down our school any night of the week, because all the girls are in there with the guys. Like training. So, like, they train with them every freaking day. Every day of training, it's girls and guys. It's not like a separate girls class. It's girls and guys in there, and they're wrestling around. So they train with these guys all day. But now you're saying, on a show, you can't even breathe in each other's direction.
Right? Or
you know what I mean?
Suspended.
And I think, and the commission just fought me on that for years. And honestly, though, what I think kind of helped was, like, things with transgender, you know what I mean? Laws changing and stuff like that. And then you go, well, hey, now, and so they
do you really want to ask these questions?
Yeah,
or
do you want to ask these questions and deal with something potential? So, but my God, I fought it for years. It was really bad for a couple of years. Yeah, they freaking went. Yeah,
someone told me about that recently. Like, when I was wrestling in Maryland, they said, like, this is a new thing, like, we're allowed to do. I was like, what?
Yeah,
I didn't even know there were places it wasn't, like, allowed. I thought wrestling was wrestling. I didn't know.
No, they've backed off it now because, and a lot of it has to do with transgender, transgender. Different laws and things changing, and that they're like, now it becomes a sketchy area with, are you discriminating? I don't think they even wanted to go down that route. Well, culturally, I don't think they want to be caught in that or start to be questioned about it. So they just backed off. But gosh, it was the dumbest fight that I would say for years. Yeah, and that's what I would say. I would say, come down to our training center. The girls learn to do this with the guys in the ring.
It's literally the same exact thing.
Same thing.
On the fans.
And I think, too, another thing that really helped us was that Maryland is one of 5 states that has 3 gender choices on your driver's license. So you can be male, female, or X. And so, when that kind of happened, it was like, okay, well, what if someone marks X on their driver's license? Then who
are they allowed to wrestle guys or girls? Or, how does that work?
And we're definitely in the minority. I mean, there's only 5 other states who are 5 states, including us, who are doing this. But I don't anticipate that going away. Like, if anything, it's going to keep increasing. So I think, just from a legal perspective, if you're going to give somebody a third option on their, a legal document, like a driver's license, then you can't have these archaic rules that then how do you explain this? You know what I mean? We're not going to make a new X division, for
But it was ridiculous for years. I mean, over a decade, I just argued it, But yeah, we're here now, so now we can do it, and they kind of leave us alone. They bring it up, they just let us alone. But it used to be not just something but it would almost, like, if a girl got involved in a guy's match, it was as bad if, like, there was blood. I mean, commissioners would freaking, what did you just do? I'm going to take your license. You know what I mean? Who was it? In the green room, the girl we got involved and did like a Hooner Karana. She was managing. Who was it that did that? Oh my!
Would it have been Flipper?
It may have been.
It probably was Flipper.
Oh man, he was like, "I'm going to suspend your promoter's license for a year," and I can't believe the girl just slipped in, was managing, and did a spot, and she did like a.
I'm sure it was Flipper.
It was during just did a spot in a match. We slipped him in, and honestly, I told him to do the spot and thought I was going to distract the commissioner. And then I realized that I had forgot when they went out there to distract the commissioner, and he was out there, and the girl did it, and he came in the back, and just, his face was red, and he was screaming, you know what I mean? And he didn't even want to care that I was like, didn't you hear the people? They loved it. They're fine. Like he was like, I don't care.
He took his job very, very seriously.
Oh man, this guy, he was serious. He was real serious. So. But here we are. So now we can do it. So now you're all right in Maryland doing that.
So that must make, more options available to you, being able to have that flexibility and say, yeah, I can do intergender wrestling, and then it gives you more, chances for booking. I mean, there's only ever going to be 1 or 2 girls shows on a card, or girls matches, unless it's like an all girls show.
Exactly.
So this gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah. And like just different experiences too. Cause like I said, typically, I'll end up working with the same women a lot, and a couple random people here and there, but in whatever area, I'm sure it happens to everybody. But I'm like, I get to work with new people or like hear how they like to talk about, a match or, just maybe try something I don't normally do because maybe it's someone bigger that could base me, like things like that. So I try to just like take it as an opportunity to, like do new things or, just learn a little bit from them if I could. So why not?
Right. So where are some places that you want to work that you've not worked yet? Like, what are your goals for 2022?
I feel like for 2022, a little bit of, I don't know if we're talking this on air or off, but when we're talking about like, quality over quantity, I'd like to just really be able to focus on certain places and just put my all into it instead of, I feel like maybe I've been spreading myself a little too thin, trying to do everything and be everywhere, and it's, you get run down. So of course, being here was on my bucket list, so I'm super grateful to have this opportunity. Cool. And, beyond, they're up by me, and I'd be interested in like trying to reach out to them. And of course, maybe reaching out to AEW at some point, like the only person who hasn't yet. But one day I'll reach out, or even Impact. I'd love to do. Like I love how they structure their work and everything. So I like just basically I was thinking this year like new places and maybe even just
quality over quantity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's the way to do it. I mean, especially once you get your feet wet in it and. Who am I going to be working with? People that can teach me things that can better, that can elevate me because you got to go up that ladder. And if it's not really, and that's what I tell the young guys, like take all that crap, take everything when you're starting. But once you start to kind of, get it a little bit, like step back and think about, is this promotion helping me? Is it going to help?
Right. You don't need to drive 12 hours to work in front of 30 people.
A lot of those companies, a lot of those promotions, it's not just like, they might rent a crappy ring, but they probably have a lot of crappy people, so you're going to end up in there with, like, are you going to actually learn?
Exactly. Or like we were talking about before, you could even get hurt, Like
and you hear about WWE, you hear about the Performance Center and why they go through phases of wanting indie wrestlers and not indie wrestlers. And the big thing is all the bad habits. Like bad habits that come from really bad indies and picking up stuff like being in there with people that don't know what they're doing. You pick up these bad habits, and that's why WWE's like through times they go through phases where they're hot and cold on indie wrestlers. Like they'll go through, we just want, professional athletes that we're going to train from scratch because we want to avoid all the stuff, and then they'll open it back up. But it's still, we've had a ton of people get signed. And it's the one compliment we get from people that come from our training center is that they don't have those bad habits and like their feet work is good and stuff like that. It's one of the things we're most proud of we get when we end up getting people opportunities down there. We always get that same feedback that the trainers are like, your guys don't have a lot of the indie bad habits, so. But so that's why it's best, I think, to kind of evolve when you get to a point like, okay, I've gotten some reps in and got out there and done some stuff, but now it's time to focus on quality over quantity.
And especially meeting, women far more experienced than me. I like seeing how their brains work, going into a match, or if something, say you're in there and something didn't go the way you thought it would, or you needed to, I like seeing how they could handle things. Like, maybe I wouldn't have thought of that, but now like tuck it away. Hopefully, remember if I need it. Yeah. But I just want, because I always like to keep learning with anything I do. I'm always like obsessive a little bit, so I'm always like, okay, I just want to, move on to the next level a little bit, get better, improve what I need to, and it helps being with people that could guide me that way.
Right. You don't want to be the one necessarily guiding them, like you want to learn too.
Exactly.
No. Makes sense.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah. Thank you for dropping in and chatting with us today and for making your debut at the first night of our Spring Fever tour. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Hope to see you back here again. And fans, you can get your tickets to our next upcoming event. Go to mcwprowrestling.com. You can not only get tickets there, but you can also check out our birthday party pages. If you you are a local fan listening, we talk about the birthday parties a lot sometimes. So, if you're interested, and there's no age limit unless you're like a toddler, but we've done bachelor parties, Cub Scout parties, Boy Scout parties, football teams, you name it. So, if you're interested, check that out on our website as well, mcwprowrestling.com, and then get your tickets for upcoming shows. And we've got our biggest one, big show coming up on the horizon, Celeb Fest 4. We'll be back in Millersville May 15th. Is that
May
15th,
15th,
16th?
yep.
Yep. It's a Sunday show, which we talked about. That's an all-day convention and then the show. And, of course, our big headliners that night are Matt and Jeff Hardy. So we hope to see you there. And I guess that's it.
Yep, very good.
All right. Well, thank you again, Adena Steele, for joining us tonight. And we will see you all next week on the MCW Cast.